Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks. Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Continuing Education, Certificate Programs, Certificate in Nutrition and Child Care, CNCC, CNCC-2 Organizing Child Care Services, Block-3 The Child, Development During Toddlerhood, Unit-14 Language Development, From Words to Sentences. 14.1, Introduction. In your interaction with children you would have seen that once they begin to utter words, the growth in vocabulary is rapid. Gradually, they learn to put words together into grammatically correct sentences. The language of the child develops very fast. Learning to speak seems to happen in the course of things. We delight and take pride in the child's accomplishments, but rarely do we think how the child manages this. It does not seem that we have to make an effort to teach language to the child. One of the things we cannot remember about our early childhood is how we ourselves learned to use language. Linguists have determined the sequence of language development by recording children's speech in natural settings and analyzing their verbal output. They have focused on how the child's language gradually acquires the characteristics of adult speech, how the child attributes meaning to words, what the reasons are for differences in the rate of language development, and why children differ in the style they speak. Studies carried out in many countries with children speaking different languages have shown that the stages in the development of language are universal, regardless of the language being spoken or the socio-economic status and the cultural background of children. In this unit we will read about the development of language during the years of toddlerhood. While we have specified the average age when most children reach a particular stage of language development, you know that there are wide individual differences in this aspect, as in most others. A question may come up at this point. Do children acquiring different languages go through the same stages of language acquisition? The early stages of language acquisition are universal and apply, by and large, to all languages. However, once children start adding grammatical forms to their speech, the sequence of development varies from one language to another, depending upon the rules of its grammar. This point will become clear as you read further. The examples that we have described in this unit are from the English language. Objectives. After studying this unit, you should be able to times describe how toddlers begin to use words to convey meaning and to communicate. Times explain how toddlers begin to form two-word sentences and describe the characteristics of these sentences. Understand how the language of the toddler acquires a grammatical structure. Times describe how children use language, i.e., state the functions of children's speech. Times identify some common mistakes that children make while learning the language. Times know that there are individual differences in acquiring language. 14.2, Adding words. In the last block we traced the development of language till the stage when the infant utters the first word. This usually happens around the first birthday. After the infant speaks the first word, she adds a few more words in the next 3 to 4 months. After this period, the increase in vocabulary is rapid and one toddler adds 8 new words every few days. By the second year, most toddlers know about 300 words and by the third year about 900 words. This does not mean that all of these are spoken. As is true at all stages of language development, the toddler understands more words than she is able to speak. While children generally begin using words after the first birthday, some may take a little longer to speak. As you have read in Unit 9, children usually talk about familiar things. Their first words name those people and objects that are most important to them. Usually, toddlers use mama, papa, and milk, see, doo-doo, or pal, or mum first. Since toddlers are attracted to movement and change, many of the first words that they acquire refer to things that move, their own actions and the things that they can manipulate. Therefore, words like ball, doll, bottle, dog, cow, boat, cycle, car and the names of their toys may occur frequently in their speech. Objects that are simply there, like tables, windows and beds, are seldom named. The toddler may understand the words table, beds, trees and house, but because she cannot do anything much with these objects, she does not find them interesting enough to use in her speech yet. Most toddlers begin by using nouns, i.e., words that name objects and people, as their first words. On the other hand, some toddlers, when beginning to speak, first acquire those words that are used in social times, shuns and interpersonal relations. These words convey a demand or a need or a greeting or express feelings. Examples of such words are want, do, please, go away, jao, do it, no, nahi, yes, see, ha, and stop it. In other words, the first words these toddlers learn are verbs and other non-noun words used to express feelings and regulate social interactions. Thus, there are individual differences even in the kinds of words toddlers acquire first. You will remember from your study of the last block that these single words function as sentences. Through one word, toddlers name objects, make requests and express emotional states like fear, anger or surprise. The meaning of these one-word utterances is usually understood by the mother. She knows the setting in which the word was spoken and is responsive to the emotional tone of the child's speech. When the toddler learns words, she may not be able to pronounce some of them correctly, as some consonants are difficult for her to produce. So she makes substitutions or deletions for the sounds she cannot say. Ball may be pronounced bo, because is difficult to say at this stage, and the toddler usually substitutes it with w. Stop becomes top, and banana gets shortened to nana. Often children make up words. One of the ways they do so is by imitating the sound associated with an object and use it as a word. In fact, adults talking to children often coin such words and use them. For example, rum for bus, ba for goats, and bhau for the dog. 14.3 The first sentences. The next step in language learning is combining words into sentences. The first sentences appear between 18 and 24 months of age. Toddlers form these sentences by combining two words. Some examples of these two-word sentences are fee cat, where baba, more milk, bus go, give me. If you analyze these utterances, you would see that the characteristic of these short and simple early sentences that the toddler uses only the essential words to convey her meaning. Plurals, tenses like ing and ed to indicate past or present, articles, pronouns, conjunctions and positions are not used. Thus, to convey the meaning "I'm playing with the car," the toddler would probably say play car or I play car, thus omitting the preposition with and article the. If you ask a 2-year-old to repeat the sentence, I am drinking milk, she is most likely to respond by saying, drink milk. The 2-year-old's language sounds like what we say when we send a telegram. We keep only the critical important words, the noun, the verb and the adjective, and omit the rest. The same is true of the toddler's two-word utterances, and so the toddler's speech at this stage is also referred to as telegraphic speech. Toddlers across all cultures and languages speak in such two-word sentences. This telegraphic speech is not a random association of words. Toddlers create these two-word sentences according to some rules. They focus on certain words and put them together in a particular order. Across all languages, it has been found that these early two-word sentences primarily include those words that are usually emphasized in the speech of adults using that language. If you think about speech, you would find that it is the nouns, verbs and adjectives that are stressed when you speak, and not prepositions or conjunctions. If you look at the content, meaning, of the toddler's two-word utterances carefully, you would see that these sentences express many relationships similar to the ones we use in our speech. For example, when the toddler says, "Mommy bag," to convey the meaning. That, this is mommy's bag, she is describing a relationship between the possessor, mommy, and the possessed object, bag. Another sentence, Nina milk, conveys the meaning, Nina is drinking milk, which conveys the relationship between Nina, the agent, and milk, the object. The toddler also begins to use adjectives to describe the qualities of objects so that you hear sentences such as red car, hot water, big tree. She also varies her tone and rhythm while speaking. This makes her speech expressive and easier for others to understand. One cannot mistake the child's requests and refusals as she says, more tea, want toy, and no eat. A rising inflection at the end of a sentence conveys a question, did they go, want book? At this age questions about names of people and objects and their location are frequent, where papa go? What that? Thus in these two-word utterances we can see the origins of the rules of grammar. Samples of speech taken from toddlers speaking widely different languages show that toddlers across cultures and across languages express such grammatical relationships in their two-word forms. The early language of children has many common features no matter what language they speak. 14.4 Acquiring grammatical structure. In the next stage of language acquisition, the toddler starts to include more aspects of adult speech. Within the 2 and 3 year period, most toddlers start to add the easier grammatical forms to their speech. Their language now becomes easier for us to understand since plurals, tenses and articles, i.e., grammatical forms, begin to be used. The sentences become longer and more complex. This change is gradual. Within a particular language there is a definite sequence in which children add grammatical forms. This sequence will vary from one language to another. In the following text, we have described the sequence in the acquisition of the English language. In English, the earliest form to appear in toddlers' sentences is the present progressive, ing, form of the verb, so that they form sentences like, you eating, doggy running. The toddler acquires the present tense first and uses it the most. Towards the end of toddlerhood, she begins to use the past and the future tense. However, her usage of the past and the future tenses is not consistent. She uses them in some cases and not in others. The child's skill in using the tenses appropriately improves during the preschool years. Between 2 and 3 years of age, toddlers are able to use a few prepositions like in, on, and under, so that you have sentences like, I sit on chair, and toy in box. Using these prepositions, toddlers are able to talk about the location of objects, i.e., where a particular object is. Then come plurals formed by adding s to nouns such as cats and books. By the second birthday, the toddler begins to use personal pronouns like me, you, and sometimes mine. The use of these pronouns shows that the toddler sees herself as separate from others. She differentiates between herself and other people. She uses these pronouns to indicate her possession of some object and to refer to her actions, such as me eat, me do myself. However, the toddler does not always use these pronouns in grammatically correct ways. The usage of pronouns improves during the preschool period. Towards the third birthday, the toddler begins to use the words this and that appropriately, as in this book and that book. The toddler's sentences become longer over the 2 to 3 year period. She can now use as many as 4 words in a sentence in the sequence of subject-verb-object location. We said earlier that the toddler does not simply string together words in a random manner. She forms sentences according to the rules as she has understood them. Let us understand this once again by seeing the development of sentences. At the 2-word stage, the toddler forms a sentence by combining a verb and an object. She says, for example, hit ball. Then she adds the agent, the subject, and says, Radha hit ball, or, I hit ball, as the case may be. This sentence is more like adult speech and states who performed the action, what the action was and on what the action was done. In the next stage, when she adds the location of the object to her sentence, you will hear sentences like, Radha put book chair. Then, as prepositions and tense endings are added, the sentences begin to resemble adult speech more and more. Some examples of sentences that children can make by the end of toddlerhood are, I see you, I am drinking milk, Mala is in school, this is cycle. The next step is forming complex sentences. There is a great variation in the age at which children make such sentences, with a few children forming these sentences before they are 3 years old. Examples of such complex sentences are, 1 See you sit down, I hope I don't hurt it, when I get big, I can drive a bus. Some toddlers start using and, but, to join two simple sentences and form sentences such as, you take some and I take some. Such sentences show that the child is developing an awareness that events are sometimes related to one another. In other words, she is understanding cause and effect relationships. Thus you can see how the child's use of language reflects the level of her cognitive development. The child's speech acts as a mirror for her thinking. The use of because, so, before, and after comes later during the preschool years. It is important to bear in mind that the order of acquisition of grammatical forms that has just been described applies only to the English language. For other languages, the order of acquisition would vary, depending upon the rules of its grammar. If a child has acquired a grammatical form, it does not mean that she will use it consistently. For example, having learned the use of plurals, she may not use them each time. The child is still learning its usage and, therefore, uses it in some instances and not in others. The child's use of language improves over the preschool years. 14.5 Language learning, children's mistakes. Toddlers often use a single word to refer to different objects in which they note some commonality. One child used the word kitty to refer to cats, dogs and sheep. This toddler had associated the word kitty with furriness, and so all furry animals were labeled kitty by her. This error in language learning is called overgeneralization. Here are some more examples of overgeneralization. One child used the word mooey for moon originally and later applied it to cakes, round shapes in books, letter 0, and the white round street light. Another used the word ball for ball, grapes, eggs, apples and any other round object. When toddlers overgeneralize, it is not that they cannot discriminate between different objects visually. They can, but they lack the vocabulary to express them separately. As they discover the names for objects, they will use them appropriately. All children overgeneralize. But the overgeneralizations which a particular child uses are unique. It is not as if all children will use the word ball for grapes and apples. The child in the above example had generalized the meaning of ball to round and therefore called all round objects ball. But for another child, the salient characteristic of the ball may be that it bounces, and so she may not overgeneralize the word ball to grapes and apples, as these do not bounce. Thus each child's errors appear to follow distinct rules. Children also overgeneralize while using verbs. When, for example, the toddler learns that past tense can be formed by adding ed, such as in played, she overgeneralizes this rule and applies it to other verbs as well. So she says, failed, flied, eated, and you. Hear sentences like, my dolly falid, I run to my uncle. Such errors reflect the level of the child's language development. They tell us that the child has learned a Rule that past tense can be created by adding, ed. Now she has to learn that not all past tenses are created in this way. Similarly, once the child learns that plurals can be formed by adding, she confidently says, toss, shoes, and cats, but she also incorrectly says, foots, sheeps, and hares. Children also underextend a word, i.e., they use a word to refer to one particular object. One child used the word cup to refer to her own cup only. Another used the word doggy only for the family pet. These are cases of underextension. These mistakes of overgeneralization and underextension appear between 2 and 5 years of age and gradually disappear after that. Children speaking different languages would make different kinds of mistakes. If you were to listen to toddlers' speech, you would find many examples of these. Have you ever noticed children making these mistakes or others of a similar nature? It would be interesting for you to note these down. Note down such mistakes in whatever language the children speak. The variation in toddlers' speech shows that from the earliest words their language is creative. They are not just copying sentences they have heard, but are creating new ones according to the rules of grammar as they have understood them. 14.6 How children use language. Functions of language. Once the child begins to speak, she discovers that language has many uses. Using language, she can express her needs. She makes requests and demands. More water. Want doll, give me. If she does not want to do something, she makes it clear in no uncertain terms, no eat, not this frock. She also uses speech to direct the attention of others to herself and influence their behavior. While playing with his grandmother, Oliver was not satisfied with the way his grandmother was making a toy train and said, "No. Put this on top." The child uses speech to give information, see cat, book there, Didi in market. To express the quality of an object or person, big book, this red car, Nina. Pretty girl, that big boat. To express feelings and give judgments, me like banana. I like you. I not cry next time. A rising inflection at the end of a sentence conveys a question, where papa go? What that? Why? Questions are very common at this age. In fact, one of the major purposes that language serves in the early years is that it enables the child to ask questions. When children learn to speak, they find out that their speech behaviors are rewarded with adult attention. They often ask why questions to sustain conversation, as Bindu did in the following anecdote. Bindu, while going towards the market with her mother, is equal to points towards the bus and says, "Mama, bus." Mother, "Yes, that is a bus. People are sitting in the bus." Bindu, "Why do people sit?" Mother, "People sit because they have to go somewhere." Bindu, "Why?" Mother, "Why do they have to go?" They have to go to their school, their office, their homes. Bindu, "Why?" Mother is equal to T. Papa goes to office, doesn't he? Didi goes to school. Sutha, people also have to go to work. Bindu, "Why Papa go to office?" Bindu's mother, who now wanted to buy fruits, distracted her attention thus, "We will ask Papa today why he goes to office, okay?" Bindu, "Look, apples. We will buy some."
Besides using speech to communicate with others, the child also uses speech to direct their own actions. The toddler, while playing with her doll, says, "Dolly, eat, sleep." The preschooler's speech during a similar play will be more extensive. She may say, "Dolly, go to sleep. Get up. It is morning now, we will play." These conversations which the child carries on with herself help to sharpen her understanding of ideas and make the relationship between events more clear. As the toddler examines two balls of different sizes and says to herself, "This ball big, it helps her to form an idea of size. The child uses speech to direct her actions in many other situations. You may have come across a child carrying some mud in her hands. You can make out that she wants to eat it, but she stops herself by saying, "No, not eat. Bad. No." She has been told not to eat mud on many occasions earlier, and now, by speaking out aloud, she is stopping herself from doing it. In the same way, Preeti, who was about to go down the stairs when she had been told not to, stops herself by saying, "No, no. No stairs. Fall." In both these cases, the children are trying to control their actions by talking to themselves. The younger child talks out aloud. As she grows older, this guidance of her own actions through speech still goes on, but now it happens silently. This speech to oneself, used to guide one's actions, is called private speech. We adults also often converse with ourselves silently to guide our actions. Toddlers have begun to grasp the humor in a situation, as is reflected in the following example. A BDUI, who is a year and a half, speaks in a mixture of babbling and some words. His language usually sounds like Jungsimshupa and similar sounding words. These words have the intonation of adult speech. While Abdul was playing with his elder sister one day, the latter began imitating him. Abdul, very surprised at such words from his sister, looked at her in amazement for some time. Then he laughed out aloud and spoke his word again, waiting for his sister to imitate him, thoroughly enjoying himself as she did. This became a game, and they continued for some time. Through the preschool and middle childhood years, as the child's language develops, she uses language more effectively for an increasing variety of purposes. We will continue this discussion on functions of language in the next block. 14.7 Variations in language acquisition. You know that there are individual differences among children in language development. The following example brings this out clearly. As you have read, most 2-year-olds speak in 2-word sentences. However, Shikhar, who was 2 years old, did not speak much. He had a vocabulary of 4 words. These were Mama, Papa, Kaj to signify car, and Bhaur for dog. Beyond this, he had to be cajoled into saying something, and even then he spoke not more than a word at a time. He understood all that was said to him and communicated with his parents using gestures and signs. Once, when he wanted to eat an orange, he attracted his aunt's attention by calling out to her, and then pointed towards the orange he wanted to eat. His aunt looked at him and said, "You want to eat the orange?" Shikhar nodded to say yes. His aunt said, "I won't give you the orange till you ask for it." Shikhar smiled and he seemed to indicate, "I know the word orange, but I won't say it." His aunt persisted. And finally Shikliar said, "Ong." One day when a cat came into the house, he communicated this to his mother by putting his hands on his cheeks and spreading out his fingers to indicate the eat's whiskers, and said, "Meow." Unlike most 2-year-olds who seemed to talk incessantly, Shikhar seemed to prefer to be quieter. However, by the time Shikhar was 3 years old, his vocabulary and speech was like that of any other 3-year-old child. There is another instance of a child who was exposed to 3 languages but spoke not a word for the first 4 years. Then, to the amazement of everyone around, he spoke in complete sentences all of a sudden. Once he started speaking, he picked up all 3 languages. You are aware that the acquisition of language is sensitive to the experiences the child has. This is clearly evident when we trace Bablu's language development. Bablu, at 2.5 years of age, had started conversing in 2-word sentences. when his cousin a girl around 4 years of age came to stay with them. She was deaf and mute and communicated using gestures. Interacting with her, Bablu also gradually started using gestures and stopped speaking. His Colonel Sin stayed at their house for about 2 months, and during this period Bablu did not say speech much. However, once she left, Bablu gradually came back to his usual verbal communication. These examples bring out the diversity in toddlers' language development. Toddlers will differ in the number of words they know and the type of sentences they speak. Even children living in the same family differ in their vocabulary, language styles, and the ages at which they reach the milestones of language development, but obviously they are learning to speak, and much later, their speech will acquire the complexity of adult speech. 14.8 Summing UP. In this unit you have read how the toddler's language develops, both in vocabulary and grammatical complexity. Studies of children from different language communities across the world have shown that the stages in the acquisition of language are fairly universal, no matter what the socio-economic status and the cultural background of the children may be, but there are differences in the ages at which each child reaches a particular stage of language development. The first words that the toddler learns refer to the salient individuals and 10 objects in her environment that are relevant for her. Many first words ~ISO refer to the toddler's own actions and the things she can act upon. By and large, the first words in the toddler's vocabulary are nouns and only a few of the words are verbs, but there are individual differences among toddlers in the kind of first words they speak. Some toddlers learn those words that are used in social interactions, i.e., verbs and other non-noun words, rather than nouns. Between 18 and 24 months of age, toddlers begin to combine words into two-word sentences. This speech is also referred to as telegraphic speech. These sentences seem to follow a certain set of rules and convey a specific meaning. In the next stage of language acquisition, toddlers begin to use grammatical forms in their sentences. Within a particular language, children add these grammatical forms in their speech in a certain sequence. In the course of learning language, children frequently make mistakes of overgeneralization and underextension which indicate the rules of language that they have learned. Over the years of toddlerhood and preschool years, the child's language continues to grow and becomes complex. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next video with the next chapter.